Welcome back to the Hunt Fish Live podcast. This week's episode is going to be a good one. I headed out to Indiana last weekend for a late season bow hunt, and it did not disappoint. Well, the trip started out kind of rough. I headed home, headed off from home mid-afternoon to pick up Jeff and head to Indiana. I got about 10 minutes out. It's roughly a 35-minute drive for me to his house. I got 10 minutes away from his place and realized I forgot my wallet. So I had to turn around and drive all the way back home. I wasn't going to Indiana without identification or credit card or bank card or anything like that. So I needed to head back to the house and pick that up. I called him while I was on my way back and said that I was going to be a little bit later than expected, and he laughed at me and called me names. So, and that's typical. Got to his place eventually and got his stuff loaded up. He wasn't hunting. He was just hanging out for the weekend and packing up the camper, closing it up for the rest of the winter because we will not be down there until maybe April. But he just wanted to make sure things were tightened up and ready for the snow. We ended up getting down a little bit later than we wanted to. It was snowy and blizzardy and icy pretty much the last 3/4 of the way. Maybe not 3/4 of the way. Probably half the way. It was 4-wheel drive on the expressway in whiteout conditions. It seemed like every other mile. So it took a little longer than expected. We did get to a place where we were able to go around all the lake effect snow. So it's tough driving down the lake shore because the lake effect snow bands, they all reach or start pretty much where the expressway is and where we are going. Once you get down to the bottom of Lake Michigan, though, it kind of clears up once you get past kind of the corner of the south end of the lake. So that's what we ended up doing. We ended up getting down. I noticed on the radar map that to the west of where we were, there wasn't any snow, and we were on the expressway, and it was 5:30. So we were battling with rush hour traffic in very unpleasant driving conditions. So we decided to get off the expressway and take the Dan way there. It's the way that I love taking. It's through a few small towns, and it's relaxing, and it feels like I'm actually slowing down and going on a hunting trip as compared to the hustle and bustle of the expressway and the other highway that you have to get on. As we were pulling in the camp, Brandon and Josh, who had already been down there, were getting back after an evening hunt. Brandon got down Thursday afternoon and was able to hunt Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, as well as Friday evening. Josh got down around mid-afternoon, probably around when Jeff and I left, and was able to get an evening hunt in as well. Brandon saw, I don't remember what they saw, but I'm sure they saw some deer. I think Brandon was at 200 and saw, he saw a bunch of deer. A few big bucks across the road, a few smaller bucks in the field, and a bunch of does. So there are still deer around, which is a great thing. Josh saw a couple as well. He was in area we call the North Woods. He had some deer come out of some bedding, feed in front of him, and we had a northwest wind down there last weekend, and where he was sitting, his wind was blowing right out in front of him, and I think he said he had 7 does down there out in front, close range, and they all ended up winding him because they were downwind. They took off, and he didn't get a shot or see any bucks or anything. So that was that. They got back to camp, and we headed out to dinner to watch some football and have some good food. The next day, we got up early, had something to eat, had some coffee, and headed into the woods. I went to a stand that where did I go Saturday morning? I went into the backfield. I've seen deer back there before. It's a cut cornfield. I was hoping to find something that was some deer that was using that field to eat. On the way down, we saw a bunch of deer eating in cut cornfield. So I figured I had a chance at one feeding a buck or doe feeding out there, and I'd be able to get a shot. The corn is about 40 yards from the stand, and between the stand and the corn is CRP stuff. So they use the long grass to travel in before they go out into the corn. So I was hoping to catch something on my side of the corn to get a shot. Well, the stand sits high in a tree. It's probably 18, 20 feet off the ground. It's a ladder stand. Right behind it, there is a drainage ditch that runs, east and west. It's probably about 8 feet. It's an 8-foot drop into this thing. And on the other side is the edge the edge of the big woods on our property, where it butts up against the neighbor's property too, but there's still a pretty good chunk of our property behind me. So I figured that's where the deer might come from. They typically bed. There's a group of does that beds right behind that tree stand that I was in. There's a bunch of thick, brushy bushes and stuff back there that they're able to lay under and hang out. In prior hunts, I have spooked deer from literally 10 feet behind the tree stand. So, luckily that didn't happen when I got up in there in the morning. So, that was good. Let's see. It was cold. It was like 14 degrees and kind of windy. Windy enough. It was pretty brutal. I had thankfully dressed warm enough for my legs and arms and chest area. So my core was warm and I was comfortable, which hasn't been the deal this whole year. I've been struggling being cold, so I was happy for that. Sun came up and of course it got colder. You guys all know how it goes. The sun, for whatever reason, the sun cracks the horizon and all of a sudden a quick burst of cold air and you just get cold. Got my camera turned on, got everything set up, and I was just sitting there waiting, watching and listening for something to come out. I heard turkeys across the street, and so I figured it was going to be a good morning. They never came onto my side, but they were clucking and yelping for a good solid 45 minutes over there before they moved on. I'm guessing they went to the west because I never heard them. After that, about 8:30, I heard something walking through the snow and the leaves behind me, and I turned my head, and I saw a doe walking through the brush. So I waited for her to get behind a bush so she couldn't see me, and I stood up and turned around to look at her. She was on the other side of the ditch, so gets kind of dicey over there. So I'm watching her peeking around my tree, using my tree to hide myself, and 3 more walked out behind her. They kept going behind me. They started behind me to my left, and they worked their way to behind me to my right. They acted like they were going to come out into the field, and they did not. They bedded down under these bushes. A few minutes later, one of the bigger does that was back there, got up and started making her way towards the ditch to cross into the field that my tree stand is facing. So I got ready because I was going to take her. There was a limb to my right that obstructs a shot directly to the right and out behind her. I had my bow drawn back, waiting for her to step across the creek and out into the CRP, but she never did. I wasn't able to get a shot at her. She was nice, and it would have been a great end to the season down there. It was something, I guess I'd never, yeah, the past few years, I haven't had a chance to pull my bow back on anything. So it was kind of nice. It was a little bit of a rush and kept me warm. However, the way that I had to stand, I was facing the wind, and the wind was blowing right on my face and on my fingertips, and holding the cold bow and everything that the wind was blowing on my feet, on my toes, everything. Um, my toes and hands got really cold really fast, and as soon as these deer took off out of their bedding area, little bedding area, and back into the woods to feed, I got out of there. I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't want to be cold all day, which I was anyways, but it wasn't worth it to me to sit out there in the cold and freeze. There was better things to do. So, and I was getting hungry, and I was getting text messages from Brandon and Josh too, and they were pretty sick of being cold as well. So we headed back to camp and got some food and hung out for a little while. I think we had to go. We had to go get propane for the camper and everything like that. So, uh, we all had a great morning hunt. Um, we all saw deer, which is great. And yeah, I'm the only one that was gonna take a shot at a doe. They all don't mind not shooting does, but I'm just desperate. Was desperate for some meat in the freezer, but yeah. So headed back, had breakfast, hung out, went to the store, went to the farm store to get some propane, and headed out for the afternoon hunt. This is where it gets crazy. I headed out that afternoon to the north side of the property to hunt along the cut bean field. Um, I went to a stand that is close to where the deer come out from the woods and the wetlands area. You can see a ton there, but it's also close to the action. Um, we had been getting a group of does on a trail camera that's uh, just before that stand that I hunted in, and we've been getting them every day. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go here, sit on the edge of the field, and hope one of these walks by, and I'm going to shoot her because I just wanted some meat. So headed up to that stand, and it was probably about, maybe an hour into the set, about 5 o'clock. Probably before that. I saw deer probably pretty much all evening. Yeah, about an hour into the set, 4:30. We got out there about 3:30. Saw deer start to come out of the woods and start feeding in the cut beans, and I was watching them, got ready a little bit, got my camera going, and just hoping something came and walked by. Well, next thing you know, there's 18 deer out in the field at one time, all feeding. One was a buck, a big body deer with a triangle head, and I looked at him in my rangefinder and ranged him at 131 yards, but I could see that his antlers had already fallen off. He had shed his antlers already. So I knew that deer was off limits, even though it was the biggest one. There was an older doe that was hanging out too. She started working my way. She got to about 130 yards as well, and started bringing the rest of the group with her. And next thing you know, there's more deer coming out of the woods, and it was this like, holy crap! There's a ton of deer out here. And then next thing you know, I look across the property because I can see quite a few hundred yards. I can see over a half a mile, and there's another group of deer coming out of the woods by my tree stand along the woods. And next thing you know, I physically seeing 36 deer at one time. I'm like, man, this is getting crazy. One of these things needs to come this way. How can one of these deer not come this way? And so I was getting excited. I got my bow in my hand and I'm just waiting, patiently waiting for one of these does to walk by. Well, in the meantime, Brandon's around the corner from me and he's watching deer too. He said he saw 46 deer, I think, Saturday night. I actually had to go pick him up because there was deer all over him after dark. So that was interesting. He said that he saw a couple small bucks, and then he saw another really nice buck that only had one antler because he had shed one already. Um, it's always hard late in the season like that to make sure that you are on a deer that doesn't have antlers, and because you know you don't want to shoot a buck without antlers. It kind of, I wouldn't say it defeats the purpose, but it's not good for the year after, for the next year. So yeah, he was covered up in deer. I had deer within range, and or not within range, but within sight, hoping they were going to come into range. So I was watching them for probably 40 minutes, and they started moving my direction a little bit. Started going out into the wetlands, to bed or drink water because it's wet out there. There's standing water. It's a pond. Surrounded by CRP, which is great. And we don't walk in there to hunt. We don't walk in there to do anything. So we just keep that area preserved for whatever the deer need to use it for. So I'm sitting there, and it's about 5:30. Sun's starting to go down, and all of a sudden, this doe that was standing out in the field looked right at me. She turned her head. I wasn't moving or anything. I was just standing there, waiting and watching. And she looked right at me. Turned around. She was broadside to start, and then all of a sudden she snapped her head and saw something that she didn't like, and then turned her body to point right at me and kind of got that posture, where they put their legs down, kind of stomping in front and just, firmly on the ground, and stone cold dead looked at me in the eyes from 130 yards away and just stood there staring. And I'm like, oh man, this is not good. This is not good at all. And she got weird. She stood and watched me, looked at me for like 10 minutes. Probably closer to 5, but it felt like forever. And next thing you know, she turns around and trots away from me. She flicked her tail twice, and that was it. She made her way to basically the other side of the field that I was on and took all the other deer with her. I was disappointed, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I don't know why it happened, but she must have, at some point in the past few months, seen somebody up in that tree stand and remembered that somebody sits up in that tree stand sometimes. And I don't know. I don't think it was me. I didn't get busted at all up there this year, so who knows? But it was a bad deal. I was hoping they were going to work their way towards me. By that time, there wasn't hardly any time left between shooting time and dark. So I packed it up and got down a little bit early just so I wouldn't spook any deer if they came back into the field or came back to the portion of the field that was out in front of me. So that was the end of my hunt. It got exciting. It was a great sit, and I hope I can have more of those in the future. All in all, great weekend with the guys. It was nice to hunt with Brandon for a while and Josh for a while and hang out with Jeff too. I'm so blessed to have such a good group of people that I get to hunt with that treat me like family, and we are like family, but we're just buddies. So Yeah, it's it was disappointing. Sunday morning, didn't see any deer. No one saw anything. Brandon took off Saturday night. He had family stuff to do on Sunday. So Josh and I went out Sunday morning and were cold and bored by 9 o'clock. We had a bunch to do before we headed home, so we left the woods and got everything packed up and made the trip home. So that was pretty much the end of my deer season. I don't know if I'll get out again. There's a late antlerless season going on until this Sunday, I think, around here, and there's also a late archery season, but I don't know if I'm going to partake in that just because of the bucks are dropping their antlers, and I don't want to make a mistake by shooting an antlerless male deer. Yeah, that, I'd rather shoot a doe, and I have no problem shooting a doe. It's just sometimes you can't tell without binoculars. So, in the heat of the moment, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Plus, it's ice fishing season, and that is definitely something I'm going to do. I think we're going out this weekend. It's been cold this week. Ice is getting good. People are starting to fish a lot, and there's fish to be caught. So hopefully I can get a great update for you in the next episode on this coming weekend's ice fishing adventures. Well, that's it for this episode of the Hunt Fish Live podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a comment. Let me know what you want to hear coming up with the hunting season's winding down. Do you want to hear ice fishing stories? Do you want tips, tricks, tactics? Let me know. And also, were you successful in the deer woods? Leave that comment as well. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Good luck and be safe out there.